I hate everything about this. Hi, my name is Sydney, welcome back to hell. And as per usual, before we launch in, today's video is sponsored by Fume, which apparently I have been saying incorrectly. But I will blame my accent for that, don't judge me. Also, I wanted to let you guys know that I have something very cool to share with you next week, so keep your eyes peeled on the channel for that. And if you don't get excited about it, I will feel personally attacked. You have been warned. Now, if you have been here for any length of time, you will know that socially, there are lots of things that I find very uncomfortable and extremely inappropriate, even sometimes when I'm the only one who feels this way. And maybe that's because I'm a prude, maybe it's because I don't get it, or maybe it's because there are people who walk among us who have some very not okay proclivities. I'm looking at you, brony boys. One of the topics that I have alluded to and only ever really touched on very briefly is the way that society responds to teenagers and young people who are barely legal, like in the adult sense. And yes, this is going to be one of those videos where I spend the whole time either speaking in code or bleeping myself. Thanks, YouTube. Now, what got this back on my radar was a recent story surrounding Danielle Bregoli, also known by her rapper name, Bad Baby, or as the Catch Me Outside girl from Dr. Phil. Very recently, Bregoli posted a screenshot to Instagram of her alleged 2021 OnlyFans earnings. In April 2021, she made $18 million, followed by several million every month after. Except November. Something was going on in November. 18 million? Okay, you have convinced me. No, I'm just kidding. I was not blessed with cute enough feet, unlike some people that I know. Oh my goodness, Murphy, you saucy boy. Isla. These are some good toesies. Now, we've had plenty of conversations on this channel previously about OnlyFans. In fact, I made a video very recently about how the entire platform is basically one giant pyramid scheme type situation. But the reason why this particular situation matters is because Danielle Bregoli turned 18 on March 26, 2021. And 6 days after her 18th birthday, she started her OnlyFans account, reportedly making somewhere in the realm of $1 million in less than 6 hours. The next month, in April, she made $18 million. And in an interview in 2023 about OnlyFans as her source of income, she reportedly said that the demographics of her subscribers are 20 to 40-year-olds who are primarily white married men with like 6 kids and a daughter her age. And like, I am fully prepared to acknowledge that this could just be me, but I find this really concerning. For whatever reason, this type of behavior and this type of situation has been socially normalized, and people don't really raise an eyebrow when it plays out, and it's only been accelerating over the last number of years. So that's what we're going to talk about today, the barely legal problem and why I am very ready for the meteor. But before you once again board my hell gondola and together we cuddle up and think to ourselves, why oh why are we here and why is it all so bad? Let's hear from today's sponsor, Fume. We all know that unwanted bad habits can be very annoying. And at this point, you've heard every piece of advice on how to stop. This juice concoction will help you. This arm patch will fix you. Maybe you should see a therapist. But the good news is it doesn't have to be this hard or unpleasant, thanks to Fume. Fume is this neat, award-winning device that works by using flavored air and is useful in stopping any hand-to-mouth habit. And to be clear, Fume is not a vape. It has no heating components, no vapor, and no gross chemicals in your bloodstream. Instead, Fume uses these neat little cores with all-natural flavors to deliver you flavored air. It's as easy as popping in your preferred core, putting your Fume in your mouth, and breathing in. And if you're somebody who can't sit still, Fume has an adjustable airflow dial and other movable parts and magnets to keep your fingers occupied. And in addition to bringing you some yummo new flavors, the grapefruit one is my favorite, there is a new Solano Fume, which has a premium walnut barrel and an onyx black-coated mouthpiece for a smoother finish. So if you too want to break your bad habit in style, then click the link in the description, scan the QR code on screen, or go to tryfume.com/sydney Sydney. They have an amazing 20% off site-wide sale running until December 1st, and after that you can use code Sydney for 10% off when you buy a journey pack, which can also be upgraded to include the new Solano Fume using the same discount. On November 16, 2023, the ex-account Amiri King posted about Bergoli and her OnlyFans money. King wrote, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a fan of the playground problem." Referring to Bergoli's viral moment on Dr. Phil, he said, "For the rest of my entire life, this will forever be a troubled 13-year-old little girl that was on Dr. Phil to me. Forever a child. I'm not sure how any grown man can possibly look past that. You will never convince me that her OnlyFans subscribers weren't viewing her inappropriately once they first saw her on Dr. Phil as a 13-year-old child. Fantasizing, waiting for her to turn 18 and flash some skin, post intimate photos, make intimate content, whatever. It makes my skin crawl." Danielle Bergoli became extremely popular after appearing several times on Dr. Phil, first in September 2016 at the age of 13, and then again in February 2017. A year after her first Dr. Phil appearance, she was signed to Atlantic Records. All the while, Bergoli was growing in popularity, amassing millions of followers across social media. And by the time she turned 18, she had millions of followers on Instagram and was earning around $40,000 a post on Snapchat, two sites notorious for borderline not safe for work content. Actually, Snapchat is used a lot in sending not safe for work content. And I guess Instagram is more borderline, depending on who you ask. I don't know. Leave me alone. In an interview with Variety magazine, Bergoli said, "I turned 18, I started making so much money when I started doing OnlyFans. And when I say making money, I mean I could retire right now if I wanted to." Interestingly, during an episode of the podcast High Low with Amrata, when Bergoli was asked what her mother thought of her OnlyFans, she said that her mother loves money and doesn't give a crap about where it comes from. And I just like to make note that Bergoli's mom is the same woman who brought her onto Dr. Phil as a child.
All right, how does your mom feel about your OnlyFans?
Girl, that lady love money. She don't give a where it come from.
Yeah, because who cares about protecting your teenager when you can potentially get a cut of their OnlyFans money? Don't get me wrong, this is a very appropriate story for the Hell Gondola, but I still hate it. During another interview in early 2023 with Barstool Sports Sunday Conversation, Bergoli said the people who subscribed to her OnlyFans as soon as she turned 18 should be in jail.
And people subscribed right away?
Yeah.
Should they be in jail?
Yeah.
She also adds that most of her profits on the site were earned through direct messages, and she was regularly sent unwanted explicit images from men. I'm going to remind you all that her biggest month was April 2021, just after she had turned 18, and a huge portion of that income was direct messages. So is the logic like, I can't message the 17-year-old, but the night she turns 18, it's on, here's a dick. Now, Danielle Bergoli's experience is not new, and it's not even unique. Well, maybe the OnlyFans stuff is, but that's largely because that's a pretty new advent. But the preoccupation with barely legal people is not. And I say people because while it looks like young women are mostly on the receiving end, this also happens to young men as well. Like Justin Bieber, for instance, experienced so much creepiness prior to turning 18 and after he turned 18, and I'm sure that that has happened to men before him and certainly happened to men after him, but I don't really orbit those parts of the internet because I'm not a weirdo. Anyway, there has long existed an interest in the taboo that is adult-teenage relationships, and while it dates back much, much further than the mid-1900s, one of the most recognizable works in recent history that relates to this issue is the 1955 book Lolita. This was followed by a Stanley Kubrick film adaptation in 1962, and then again in 1997. But some have said it's because of Kubrick's version that even saying the word Lolita conjures the image of an underage girl who is aware of her own attractiveness and her ability for intimacy with others. Lolita is not the first story of its kind, but it certainly endures and is romanticized in pop culture, despite the fact that the story is about a middle-aged professor who kidnaps and participates in inappropriate behavior with his preteen stepdaughter. In recent years, entertainment outlets have continued telling stories about these sorts of relationships, with Hollywood producing some notable films like American American Beauty, Beautiful Girls, and even Waiting with Ryan Reynolds.
On the other hand, maybe she is too young. Oh, like that's ever stopped you before? You know what? That is a very, very good point.
But on some level, some people justify these stories as just that, stories. And although they explore some taboo and often skin-crawling concepts and ideas, they're not actually hurting anyone. This is the same argument I came into contact with again and again while researching for this video, and the reality is that for some people, it's a perfectly reasonable one. Some people. Some being the operative word. But this concept, this issue, has never stayed on the silver screen or in the pages of books. The preoccupation with barely legal people plays out in real life, especially with regard to celebrities. In 1975, a 10-year-old Brooke Shields was photographed completely unclothed and uncensored, only for the images to be later published in a Playboy publication called Sugar and Spice. I can't and won't be showing you these images for very obvious reasons. The images were taken with the consent of Shields' mother. However, in 1981, Shields sued the photographer who took the images, Gary Gross, or Gross, I don't know, but either way, it's an appropriate name, arguing that he should not be allowed to profit off the photos, and the photos would cause her irreparable harm. The lawsuit was dismissed by the New York Supreme Court. And in his ruling, Justice Edward Greenfield stated that the pictures were not erotic or adult content, except to possibly perverse minds, and that while the images might cause Shields personal embarrassment, they did not constitute irreparable harm, as Shields' profile had risen in recent years since the photographs were taken. What the fuck? Look, maybe I'm missing something here, but we are talking about a 10-year-old pudding person, published in a Playboy publication, whose images have been reprinted and recirculated since. What do you mean, perverse minds? These are the perverse minds.
You are creepy as shit.
So many times while I was researching for this video, I was just like, what am I reading? Shields was a child when they were taken, and frankly, no judge in their right mind should ever have signed off on allowing these to continue to circulate. But like the young women who came after her, Shields was already being spoken about like an adult. When she was 12 years old, the magazine High Times published an article that described Shields as a sultry mix of all-American virgin and nascent adult worker. That I'm sorry, I can't think of a YouTube-friendly way of saying this particular word. Woman who is flippant with her intimate relationships? This video is probably getting demonetized anyway. It doesn't even matter at this point. We're talking about Lolita stuff. We're already in too deep.
We are screwed.
In the article's first paragraph, the writer opens by calling Shields a term coined in the Lolita novel I mentioned earlier. He goes on to describe Shields as the delicious stuff of teenage fantasies become flesh, barely old enough to want, but too young to get. We can look forward to watching her fill out over the next decade. My dog in the background is screaming. That's how I feel inside. Anyway, I want you to remember this line and this concept because we're going to come back to it. Also, one could probably argue that it was around this time that the term jailbait really sort of came into common vernacular, given that in this spread, Shields was referred to as $1 million jailbait. By the time the 90s and early 2000s rolled around, the obsession with barely legal celebrities was in full swing. On his radio show, comedian Howard Stern was notorious for making completely inappropriate comments about the Olsen twins, twin actresses who starred on the show Full House as children and rose to prominence as teenagers. Speaking of the girls, he said, "Now, normally I don't look at a 13-year-old child and them, I don't, but these two are pieces of ass. They've grown up so perfect." While I was trying to find the actual clip that goes along with this quote, my Google searches were getting wild. And the whole time I was just thinking, I am 100% on a list somewhere. But you know, if I'm on a list for this, then I take pleasure in knowing that Howard Stern is too. During another show, he commented that the twins, who he was told were 15 at the time, were hot as hell.
Man, he was linked to someone else that was really, really hot. The Olsen twins?
You're still waiting to see who gets the Olsen twins.
I gotta get that. I'm a single man. I could get that.
Are you gonna win that lottery?
I want the Olsen twins. I want them both. How old are they now, the Olsen twins?
15?
No. Is that young?
Yeah, they're still very young.
Yeah, I don't care. They're hot as hell, man. They're busting out, though, boy. They cruise through puberty very good. They have bodies of 16-year-olds.
Once a man even called into the show to say that Stern will only speak about the twins individually when he's trying to determine who he wants to have intimate relations with once they turn 18.
All right, let's go to Mike. Mike, you're on the air.
Hey now.
Hey now.
Yeah, speaking of the Olsen twins, the only time you're going to speak of them individually is when they turn 18, who you want to bang first.
Yeah, it was weird. I was reading this magazine.
Yeah, Mary Kate or Ashley.
Exactly.
Well, actually, Beth was reading a magazine. She goes, hey, did you see this? And I forget what magazine it is, but it's the Olsen twins hugging each other in a photo shoot, and they go, this is Howard Stern's fantasy.
I don't mean to sound dramatic, but I'm almost entirely convinced that anybody who had anything to do with these teenage stars and was reporting on them in the 80s and 90s needs to be in jail.
Right to jail, right away.
The Olsen twins experienced this unwanted attention all throughout their teenage years. And what's important to remember here is that audiences had effectively watched these girls grow up. They started on the sitcom Full House as literal babies and were in the limelight ever since. It was like people were patiently waiting for them to hit puberty and then to become quote-unquote legal so their intimate interest in the pair could go from being perverse to ordinary. And that sentiment more or less tracks for every one of the women I've mentioned or I'm going to mention going forward. And it's something that I can't overstate. Whether these young women start in the public eye as infants, 10-year-olds or 13-year-olds, people watch them grow into adults. And somewhere along that road, some members of the audience start waiting for their attraction to become pedestrian rather than horrifying. The tweet I referenced earlier from Amiri King absolutely hit the nail on the head. And I think that's what makes these 18th birthday countdown calculation thingos so absolutely skin-crawly. The year the Olsen twins were set to turn 18, there were reportedly countless websites dedicated to counting down the months and weeks. But the birthday counters didn't begin with the Olsen twins. This concept was in full swing for singer Britney Spears, who experienced a tremendous amount of interest around her virginity and her ascension to adulthood. Weird. She too was subjected to the 18th birthday countdown, but was also given a tabloid spread in a magazine when the day arrived. One of the spread's images was captioned, "Britney is a big girl now. Britney Spears has grown up and boy does it show. The team dream looks ravishing in knee-high boots and a snappy snakeskin mini outfit." This is really hard to say. "A baby no more. Her darling neckline reveals her ample bust." Britney reportedly enhanced with implants when she was just 17. What am I reading? Why are you calling attention to her chest? Hello, police? You know, I would joke about calling the FBI, but I'm banking they were the ones making the countdowns. Other side remarks were made over the years by other celebrities, including Ashton Kutcher, who in 2003 made comments during an episode of Punk'd about 15-year-old Hilary Duff and the Olsen twins, remarking that everyone is waiting for them to turn 18.
Hilary Duff is in Lizzie McGuire. She also has an album out. She's going to be in a movie called Cheaper by the Dozen, and she's one of the girls that we're all waiting for to turn 18, along with the Olsen twins.
Actress Natalie Portman said that a local radio station held a countdown to her 18th birthday, and critics routinely commented on her, quote, budding breasts in their movie reviews. Even recently, in 2018, a San Francisco sports radio host was fired after making a series of suggestive comments about 17-year-old US Olympian Chloe Kim. While on air, Patrick Connor said to his co-host of Kim, "She's fine as hell. If she was 18, you wouldn't be ashamed to say that she's a little hot piece of you-know-what." And she is. She's adorable. I'm a huge Chloe Kim fan. Her 18th birthday is 23rd April, and the countdown is on, baby. Connor ended up tweeting an apology, saying that his actions were a weird attempt to make people laugh that fell flat. "My comments about Chloe Kim were more than inappropriate. They were lame and gross. I'm truly sorry, Chloe. You've repped our country so brilliantly. I apologize to my colleagues and listeners for being a total idiot," he wrote. Now, obviously, there are countless examples of this kind of behavior, from the countdowns to the weird articles to everything in between, but the advent of the internet really spurred this forward. And once again, to some people, this is merely harmless fun that is designed to call attention to somebody reaching adulthood. Except that's not what it is at all. Consider this for a second. Famous For No Reason person Kendall Jenner also had an 18th birthday countdown. But in addition to that, at least 6 adult entertainment companies reportedly approached her with an offer that she debut some intimate content with them upon her 18th birthday. One company reportedly offered her $1.8 million to star in a video with a partner of her choosing, although that seems kind of low. The only difference between this offer and the OnlyFans debut of Danielle Bregoli is that Bregoli bypassed official companies and instead just self-sexualized. Jenner also said no, so there's that too. But it's no real surprise that this was even on the table for a mega celebrity like Kendall Jenner. And just like the women who had come before her, Hilary Duff, Natalie Portman, Brooke Shields, Britney Spears, so on and so forth, she was yet again another little girl that people grew up watching. So why would anybody view her, or any other teenage woman for that matter, as an adult entertainer in the making? One article I read posed a potential explanation for this phenomenon. There is a pervasive idea that girls are ticking sexual time bombs, that once they reach 18, the floodgates are well and truly open to all kinds of abuse. Coming of age for boys is a beer with your father. For girls, the rite of passage is warding off unwanted sexual attention from men old enough to be your father. Now, whether you agree or disagree with this sentiment, there is something to be said for the way that people behave towards minors or those who look like minors. And while in this video I am mostly using celebrities to illustrate my points, I want to highlight and reiterate that this happens to everyday people. In fact, entire subreddits have been created as a form of countdown for particular girls to turn 18, so that presumably people who know them can post and discuss those girls. Then there are these self-described red pill commentators who push the idea that 16-year-olds are more appealing than adults. And there is, of course, an entire conversation to be had here about barely legal adult content, which features women who are either genuinely freshly 18 or who look as young as humanly possible. I'll also make note of the fact that, as far as this type of content goes, there is a lot of evidence to suggest that many of these young people are not actually adults, because there are no checks and balances when it comes to age verification of the quote-unquote models. Then there's the side conversation to be had about friend of the playground baiting, which we've discussed on this channel previously, and honestly, I don't want to get into again. The category of barely legal in the adult content world is one of the most popular categories the world over. And I suppose that brings me to one of my primary points here. Everybody loves to be anti-fan of the playground. Everybody loves to joke about the wood chipper and vocalize and express their opposition to this abhorrent attraction. And don't get me wrong, that is great. This is the way it should be. This should be the collective sentiment expressed socially. But that typically takes place when people are exposed to the articles or the stories about putting people who are mistreated and all the horrific details I can't give you on YouTube. But alongside that also exists the fact that barely legal is one of the top most viewed adult content categories the world over, year on year. And that tells us that this viewership likely doesn't represent some tiny portion of the population. It couldn't. And that raises the question, what if this portion of the population is a lot larger than you believe it to be? And what if somebody who consumes this kind of content walks in your circles? What if a few of them do? And I know that is such a hard thing to consider and to think about for most of us, and there are a multitude of reasons why. But I'd argue that's mostly because we like to live with the idea that these people with these interests do not walk among us, that there's some Quasimodo-looking person hiding in a clock tower somewhere. But the reality is that's not actually the case. With reference to the young celebrity women that I've discussed in this video, what age did these girls have to reach before adults watching them decided they were attracted to them and couldn't wait for them to be quote-unquote legal, so their attraction could be justified on a social level? And when these people are engaging with barely legal adult content, putting aside that there are so few literal age verifications for the women participating, why do they want to watch someone who looks as young as humanly possible while still being a legal adult? Why are there subreddits dedicated to waiting for underage girls to turn 18 so their images can be shared and exchanged? And why, oh why, is it socially acceptable to discuss teenagers in magazines, on the radio, and entertainment so graphically without pushback or criticism? Why do people treat teenagers as if they are ripe for the picking once the clock strikes midnight on their 18th birthday? I've seen a lot of this explained away by the idea that youth is simply a sought-after quality, especially in women. But where is the line on youth when it comes to adult attraction and interaction? Because to me, this sort of attraction is not appropriate. And yet, it is supremely common. There's one other thing that I think is very important to note when it comes to this, and although it's not 100% related to what we're discussing in this video, I think I would be quite remiss if I didn't bring it up. Obviously, not all of this takes place online, on OnlyFans, on adult entertainment sites. It bleeds over into the real world and into dating. One 2018 study looked at a month's worth of data from an online dating platform and concluded that, for heterosexual couples, the average woman's desirability peaks when she is 18 and drops off after that. 18 is the first year she is legally allowed to use the site. The desirability for men, on the other hand, peaks at 50 and then drops off. Now, this is obviously only the data from one site over a single month, but maybe there's something to be said for these numbers and the differences in what both sexes find appealing. Another article I saw attempted to put all of this together and essentially concluded that, with female youth, comes the perception of innocence and inexperience, and to some people, this is extremely desirable. The interest in barely legal women especially might be tied to the fact that they're perceived as easier to control, and to quote writer Tonne, don't know the difference between someone intriguing and someone effed up. And if we're being completely honest, not defensive and not trying to make excuses for this thing that we've cultivated in society, well, in most cases, maybe even in all cases, it's predatory. The uncomfortable reality is that there is no biological, developmental difference between 17 years and 364 days old and 18. But legally, there's an enormous difference, and there are people out there who are prepared to wait for that legal differentiation. As somebody who was once a young and dumb teenage girl, can you believe it? I say some of this from experience. The sad thing is that when you're 15 or 16 years old and someone considerably older shows interest in you, you feel mature. You feel like the reason they're choosing you, for lack of a better word, is because you're not like the other girls. And it's not until you get a little bit older and you think about it a little bit that you finally ask the question, why was someone of that age even interested in me to begin with? And in the cases where somebody waited around for that magical invisible line of age to be crossed, we also never stopped to think about why they were prepared to do that. It's funny because I sent this script to my mom while I was working on this video, and I said, you know, is there anything I missed? Have a read, tell me if it makes sense. And she basically said to me, what's so interesting, Sydney, is that all these things that I was trying to tell you when you were a young, dumb, idiot teenager, that's my emphasis, she didn't say it like that. She said, when I was trying to tell you these things, you just rejected it, wholesale rejected it. And now it's interesting hearing you repeat back much of what I had to say to you when you were younger. And it's like, it's so sad that I was just so inaccessible as a young person that what she was saying is correct and I couldn't hear it. I couldn't receive that information. And perhaps if I had listened, or perhaps if I'd known better, then I wouldn't have put myself in some situations that were 100% cagey and very odd. For those of you who can relate to dating somebody who was several years older than you when you were in your late teen years, I'm right there along with you. And it's weird stuff to think about as an adult. Ugh. It's like, thank you for the trauma. This is why I have a sense of humor. Anyway, one of the things I didn't want to do in this video is basically paint teenagers as people who have zero autonomy, because that's not how I feel, and that's not how I perceive them. How else do you get familiar with the world around you if you can't experience it? In short, I don't want to infantilize them. But by the same token, it is up to adults to protect them. And when we reach a point socially where we are romanticizing statutory rape, we have a problem on our hands. In the end, I do believe that there is a lot more to this conversation that is uncomfortable to address and consider. But if we do in fact intend on protecting young people, then this is a conversation that 100% needs to be had. Now on that note, and before I open the floor to all of you, this is just a reminder to check out Fume using the link in the description or scan in the QR code on the screen. Now in addition to their normal 10% off when you buy a journey pack, until December 1st they are running a site-wide 20% off that you should go and take advantage of. Use code Sydney and enjoy. Now open the floor to all of you. What do you all think? Is the barely legal thing actually a problem? Do you think that as far as teenagers go, they are fair game? Are you on my side of the fence where you think that this is incredibly developmentally inappropriate and people really need to stop with this? Do you have any answers as to why this is taking place? Why people have these attractions? Why society seems to weirdly encourage it and not call it out? And what do you generally make of this issue overall? As always, if you are here to the end of the video, congratulations. This one was a hard one. If you are not subscribed already and you would like to see more of me and this kind of content, feel free to click all of the relevant buttons. Leave a like, leave a comment. I love reading them. I read the majority of them and I love always hearing your thoughts. And I will see you pretty people in the next video.